In
Jenny?
progress.
Renee?
Yes, I can hear.
We see you, Jenny. Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Can you hear the mayor, Jenny or Renee?
Yes, I can hear the mayor. Is there an image?
So let me.
You know, when you talked, it showed it going through on the Zoom. I'm surprised it can't hear us.
I can barely hear the mayor.
Freddie wants to.
Yes.
Yes.
Jenny and Renee, can you hear me now?
Yes. Loud and clear.
Yes.
Okay, so let's try to speak.
or community center or senior center. So how do we make sure that that doesn't happen? And then just 2 comments. I am fond of the reservation road site. I like the multiple uses and public access. I also like the conversion of the Hillcrest into a recreation space. And for me, I agree with our public commenter with regards to Lock Padden. And something that I actually had is just that we just take it off of the table. It's too pristine and precious of an open space to build on. So I would like to see that. And then just quickly, thank you to the consultants. I understand that these are very conceptual ideas. And just as we move forward, we absolutely will be engaging with the public even more. And I'm excited for these investments into our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm so sorry. Thank you, Jenny. Elizabeth just raised her hand, so she was on my mind. Could everyone in the room hear that? Okay, Matt, you could hear that? Okay, then I won't repeat that. And we have our other council person, Elizabeth Fisher, coming in on the public side. Elizabeth, we'll have you go now, and welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I will be brief. It's middle of the night for me. I would just like to express my support for the Reservation Road site. And I have a slight preference for locating the fire station, the police station next to the future fire station at Cypress Knolls, just for future growth. It would keep more options open to expand the future civic center and also expand the future fire station. And I also agree that I've always said Lock Padden Park is a beautiful park, but I do not think it's the right location for a civic center. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Did everyone hear Elizabeth's comments? Okay. All right. Let's give everyone on the remote public side and in the chamber here a chance to reconsider talking if you haven't spoken yet. Anybody in this chamber that would like to speak that hasn't yet? Okay. Anybody online that hasn't spoken, would you like to? I don't see any hands going up, so we'll close public comment. And Councilmember McCarthy, did you have questions, comments?
I do. Yes. I do.
Would you like to go now or later?
Sure, I can go now.
Okay.
Do you think I can go from my device here, or is it better to go somewhere else?
Oh, yeah, I think you need to switch momentarily with me. I think.
Your device might, this device might work.
Yeah, let's try that.
I'll mute mine. Let me mute mine there.
All right. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Thumbs up.
So trying to kind of formulate a few of my comments. First of all, I'm thrilled to hear from my colleagues on the council, whether they spoke as members of the public or not, that there is a disfavor in using the Lock Padden site, because I agree with that as well. And as I talk to people in the community, the words that I keep hearing are, leave our parks alone. And I agree with that sentiment. I think our parks are very special places that should be protected to the greatest extent. As I think about a location for the city hall buildings or the city buildings in general, I really think about these kind of non-tangibles that are really hard to develop metrics for, right? Like this sense of place. I think of not only construction elements, but also location. So San Luis Obispo, their council chambers is attached to their library, and then their city staff offices are in a room like this, but it's on the second floor. So the city staff offices actually look down into the public, in a library, right? And so they see their public engaging with education every day. I think of Seaside, where their city council chambers are kind of sunk and make people the focus of the city buildings, right? Versus this paradigm where there's an audience and I feel like I'm in a play and I'm supposed to entertain, right, an audience, which is not really a productive way, in my opinion, of developing a city council chambers. So those are a couple of things that I'm thinking of in terms of location of these buildings. I heard a lot of comments about the fire station and the police station near Cypress Knolls. That's something that I want to think about a little bit more. I don't know that I disagree with that, but the elephant in the room, right, is that those are our most expensive houses in the city. The house directly across from that proposed location is $2 million. You know, if you agree that these facilities decrease property values by commonly accepted 1.8%, I mean, back in the napkin math, right, that's like $1 million of property values that kind of dissipates when that's built. So not a popular thing to say, but I'm going to say it because I think we're going to hear that from residents of those communities. Let's see. I tried to make some objective things that I'd like to see in locations. I think the location needs to feel accessible to the broadest population, as central as possible. I think it needs to blend the outdoors and the indoors so that there needs to be a space where people can gather both in a setting like this, but also for other civic gatherings, kind of public square kind of gatherings. I think that needs to exist. I'm very partial to this space that we're sitting in now. I think it's a beautifully centrally located spot that is elevated to some extent. I've been in the police building that's even, goes up another couple stories. It has great views. There's a sense of when you're in there that you're kind of looking over the city that you're managing, which I think elicits a feeling of maybe professionalism and kind of duty of what staff and electeds are here for, right? So that's an important element for me. And I just have a couple more, Mayor, if you'll bear with me. I think ideally the location should serve to revitalize a place versus being put in a place that's really nice. So I do think of Reservation Road meeting that criteria. I certainly think of this location as meeting that criteria. This is our most disadvantaged area of the city, and could use a lot of revitalization. Sure, I have two more comments if you want me to finish up. I may not have to come back. Real quick, log pattern is in our coastal zone. That wasn't mentioned, so really important to think about. The Coastal Commission, really looks for uses that serve people that want to visit our coast. I don't know that city buildings would do that. And then the last point that I'll make for now is there's two areas that weren't considered, and I'm curious why. And one is Preston Park. We've talked about this council has a willingness to possibly sell that land altogether. So why not consider using some of that land to build out city facilities? And then the other one is, and I think I know the answer, but the other one is Sea Haven Park. Quite a big expanse of land. I'm curious if there's any room or if that goes against a development agreement to build facilities there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Thank you, Brian. No, I think you have to mute it. So Kathy, I apologize for, in my head, you'd already spoken. That's only because you started to before we went to other people. So let's go to you next, but let's ask Lane to get answers to Brian's questions. Preston Park, Sea Haven.
So we didn't really look at Preston Park closely. That's a new thought, and so we can certainly go back and look at that. We do have space at Preston Park, so that certainly is an option. Sea Haven, even though it's a city-owned park, it's part of the development agreement to be a park, and the developer would have to be willing to change that, and I don't think that would be feasible.
Could we just maybe ask in an informal discussion? I mean, because you're right. I agree that would be really important to know the developer's opinion. And I just don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible that they might welcome that and think that's a great asset to their community.
We could definitely do that.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Biala?
Timing myself too, but I'm gonna have to come back. Okay, so everyone can hear me? I can't see myself and I have no, okay, they hear me. Can you hear me out there? Okay, I'll try to speak loudly.
Yes.
Okay, so what I'd like to first do is to look at questions that I had in terms of not the specific ones that have been rated, but some questions that I think, oh, time is up. Oh dear. What on earth? Oh, you time me. I can't chew and talk at the same time. So I want to just pose some questions for all of us to think about rather than focus on the specifics at this point, because it will drive the questions that we ask. Because the criteria that were used here is also omitting other things, like what we talked a little bit about what's coming up in the future. We're not looking at all the other places around these sites that could, impact our decision. There are so many things, and I want to just kind of give you a framework. So first thing, as I ask for our community center or city hall or other facilities, do we want a park setting or do we want an urban feel? Some of the sites are like sort of sandwiched in a downtown property, right? There's a shopping mall on the one side, and there's an MST, or or other ones are parks. Okay, DiMaggio Park, Loch Padden Park. How do we envision our civic center? Monterey, they are sort of, I think, surrounded more, well, they have commercial and residential, but they have a huge lawn area in front of City Hall where a lot of community activities happen, or even a lot of protesting. There's a very large kind of place. Some of the facilities that we're talking about here don't have that amount of space. So we have to think about first, what is it that we want? And then do we want it like at the ends of downtown where we have to probably see more growth then beyond on Reservation Road? Or do we want it more centralized to where Del Monte and Reservation are currently at? Because those are identified as our downtown. So where do we want our so-called civic community centers? And what brings pride to Marina? Do we want gorgeous, setting around our civic hall, or do we want it on a busy street where it's kind of a long, kind of parcel? And do we want it to be unique? Do we want it to be just a building where all these things go, or do we want to have places around it so we can build other things there? We've been talking about an Asian garden. We've been talking about a food forest, MLK statue where people could visit. Do we want those kinds of things so when people visit our civic center or community centers, they have a place to get educated about all kinds of things? I have in my hands a memorial, veterans memorial that was bequeathed to me. I mean, we could put things like that, but not if we're confined to a small area on a busy street. So we have to be able to say, what is it that we want the look to be? And do we have enough room to expand to other things for the future that make that not only just for the locals, but a tourist draw as well? Do we want that kind of idea of where we're going to go? And pedestrian walkways. I know that people were saying they like Loch Padden because you can walk around it. Well, in your new civic center on some of these other ones, are you going to be able to walk around? Or are you going to walk around small little sidewalks next to tall buildings? These are the kinds of things that we have to figure out. What are our values? And for this civic center, this community center, what is it that we really want? And is there already things around us that would sort of be the civic area? Like, for example, in Loch Padden Park, we already have the library. Across the street, we have another park. Across the street, we have the courthouse. Those are the beginnings of a whole sort of almost district of civic and community interests. And I think we've already talked about, do we understand the future of Marina that is already in the works? Where are we having the parks? Where are we having the sports center? When the timing of, we already talked about it. We can't look at these things in isolation. We already have so many plans going on. Whether it's the Marina Station to figure out where the next fire department is, whether it's the sports center, and why were we putting a gym in when we're going to have this gorgeous sports center nearby. And I'd also like to say the ideas of combining the different sites, I think is good. I think, I came in with a sort of a mindset that we've got to have everything together. But the idea has been proposed that we have a Cypress Knolls for PD and fire, let's say, and then the rest goes to reservation. Why couldn't we have the same and say DiMaggio Park will house the fire and the police? And across the street in Loch Padden, we have the community center and the chambers, et cetera. I mean, we can now see that there's another still district, right? They're right across the street from each other, but maybe the PD and the fire department go in DiMaggio Park. If we're already saying the fire department wants it in DiMaggio Park, that's what they planned. And lastly, I think we need to know, how much detail do we need to get this done? I mean, the reason why we're sitting here is because we have to be able to say in the bond measure in November, where are we going to build this? And so my thought is, how are we going to decide what do we need to decide for the minimum participation in the bond measure? And I don't have a sense of that. I don't know whether it's enough to say, we're kind of looking at this, but we've now discarded the combinations that could happen because we don't have time to figure it out. So I feel like we need more time. And that's all I'm going to say for now, because based on those questions, I mean, those overall perspectives, then I would like to ask specifics on the different specific sites. So that's, oh, you got it. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Kathy, Brian, Elizabeth, and Jenny, especially Jenny and Elizabeth, for taking your time out from home and other things going on, traveling to be with us. Elizabeth, it's early in the morning for you, probably mid-morning. So some of my questions are, why are we in a compressed time frame? I think everyone should be on the same page as to why we're on a compressed time frame. And I think Lane is well situated to address that.
Our time frame is driven by, if we want to get this on the ballot measure for November, we have to be, the council has a deadline to approve a resolution, putting it on the ballot by August 8th is the absolute deadline. And so really in July, the council needs to be adopting your resolutions to make a decision on what we're going to put on the ballot and how much.
Thank you. And I think one elephant in the room is Preston Park and Abrams, because we haven't analyzed the comparison of selling Preston Park and Abrams with its pros and cons to going to a bond measure with its pros and cons. And I think that we have to address that elephant if we expect a bond measure to pass. So I guess my question is, do we have time for public and council discussion about the pros and cons of those options?
Yes.
Yes, we do. Okay. The cost to buy the Del Monte shopping strip we kind of assumed it was not tenable, but do we have a ballpark wild estimate of the cost of buying the Del Monte strip that would make this piece where we sit larger, more versatile? Is it $100 million? Is it $5 million? Do we have any wild estimate?
I would think 3 to 5 million.
So $3 to $5 million is not a game changer, given we're talking tens of millions of dollars. If we think this is the hot spot, 3 to 5 million is not, that needs to be considered. Question that Kathy kind of got to, how does the options discussed from our consultants regarding recreational facilities align with the master recreation plan, where we've already gone to the public and said, what do we all need? Okay, pickleball, you're going to go there. Baseball, you're going to go here, etc. So how does what we talked about today, recreation-wise, line up sort of what Kathy referred to with everything else we have envisioned?
That definitely is a change from what we have adopted. Set aside in the budget is several million for expanding our sports fields, and the concept is we have existing ball fields there, and you want to keep them together, and that's our plan. So that would definitely change that parks master plan concept.
Okay. Some people are frustrated from the ball field world because we keep changing where they're going to go, and they think they're getting they're the can getting kicked down the road. So if we tell them once more things are changing, I can see eyes rolling, feeling they're just getting moved along and not being satisfied. When there were comment was made by the consultant that there's not enough space here for current and future staff. When I think of perhaps the fire and police going to California Avenue, then would there be enough space here for current and future staff?
So this site is one of your larger sites, right? So the overall combined square footage of all the lots that you have from north to south is actually quite a substantial site. So could you develop a community or civic center here on site? Yes, the answer is yes. There's enough space there. You would have to probably look at relocating some of the facilities that you have here, like the gym that you have on site right now. You have the playground here. So if you start looking at this site, some of that might have to be reordered. You also have the topographic drop here. That's not ideal, but it can be used for, like we had in an early discussion with Lane, I think the first or second time we were here, we were thinking about having the public access here on the level of the Hillcrest Avenue parking lot. And we could have like a police department that has its police department access from that side below us, right? So then you could still have the proximity, and you could still have different addresses that serve different communities. So the short answer, yes, you can establish here a civic center, a community center. We just feel from the first time when we came here, you needed signs to point people to the right location. That is not ideal for a growing community. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And that could change if we purchased the frontage of Del Monte Boulevard. It would change a lot of the issues you just mentioned.
Yeah, so if you get more visibility from that side, that would help with the the image side, you would still have this aspect that you have to vacate, relocate the functions that you currently have on site to build new, right? So that was when we talked earlier in the slide deck, said like there was a factor that we took into consideration.
Right, but you could start to construct all of that on Del Monte into what you want without affecting this. And then when that was ready, you might temporarily move there and then come back.
Correct.
Sorry, and I just want to tack on one thing that I think both our commenters tonight here in person were dead on, and I don't think we really hit it that well. And this is this idea of civic identity, right? What are you presenting to your public? And we had long talks about that with staff. We didn't get into that tonight, but I do think that has a lot to do with the property you select and the way you present yourself to the public and the way you interact with your public. So I just want to actually applaud that. I think everyone here is kind of thinking about that right now in terms of the way the building presents itself, and whether it's urban or in a park. I think you could still do that. I would just think where's your energy going today? It seems to us like you guys went through a really elaborate, I'll call it your downtown specific plan, right? That really looked at your urban areas and how you could support that further. So whether it's this site or Reservation Road, I think it could serve that. And then I just wrote down some other ideas about, a place of pride and pedestrian access. And I would just, reopen up this discussion about how people can access City Hall, right? Is it walkable? Reservation Road is great because you could actually take a bus there possibly if you didn't have a car. So all those things kind of go into play in terms of the way the public interacts with its city, with its government. So, oh, and by the way, there was a comment earlier. I can't remember who it was. I got it wrong. Did we include 10% or 15% contingency? So our numbers are raw. They're called ROM. They're rough order of magnitude numbers. There is not an actual cost estimate. We haven't done a cost opinion because there's not really a building. Really, there's just boxes with square footages. So right now we're using informed information on other projects and current square footage dollars to come up with this number. The hope is that we actually get to design a building for you, and at that point we would be probably carrying 15% at schematic design, 10% at design development, and that number gets smaller as you go through the process. So I just want to clarify that.
So as that number gets smaller, is it additive or it's just a running total?
You're defining more, right? So early in a project, you know rough square footage, and maybe you understand the structure. Later on the project, you know the structure, you know the mechanical system. So as you know more, the contingencies get to reduce by percentage.
It's not that you spend the contingency along the way. It's that your awareness of it is sharpened, and so it usually goes down.
Right. And really, I should have clarified. It's actually a design contingency, right? So we typically carry design contingencies in a project so that we can cover the unknowns. Once you are, say, in plan check and we know what the project is, now we're talking about construction contingencies. They're kind of two different things. So sorry, that was a long way to say that.
Okay. Along with that question, one of mine was whether design and environmental assessment costs were included in your ROM, your rough estimates.
Okay, so I want to maybe elaborate on what Tyson said. The price per square foot that we gave you, or that is underlying the table that you see, that's the cost that we have seen other communities succeed building comparable facilities like fire station. We build a lot of fire stations. We work with communities to build city halls, right? So we have seen that these costs suffice to do this. Of course, the sky is the limit. If you want to have golden handrails, then the cost will go up, right? But this is a good solid number to start with, right? And then once you start the design, as Tyson points out, in the early stage of the design, as you are frugal or you kind of clamp down on your program, you make wise site selection decisions, right? Those are things that in a very high proportion affect your cost. And as you go through the project realization, your ability to steer the ship in a different direction cost-wise is diminishing, right? Think of a big sea cargo ship that goes, and it moves very slowly. So you put it on a certain direction, right? And as you go forward, in the end, you can really only save like by reducing quality of materials, right? So the early stages are the ones for you.
So my question was, were your rough square footage costs estimates, did those include design and environmental assessment? Soft costs, thank you. 62.5 million, including all stages. Okay. I wanted to address community center. I think it's hard to see different than we've lived. And for so long, we've lived with this building being closed most of every week. And then it gets a city council surge. And we've seen an office building that we call City Hall get no public input really, because it's just some offices. So why would people want to go there? And then we have a community center with lots of children parts of the day, lots of adults parts of the day, and then it's closed for most of the weekend. But I think that a modernized city hall, it would be using space much more efficiently so that the space we have is used multiple ways during the course of a week. So this dais could either have a curtain, not a curtain, but a separator where you don't see it, or it could be portable to move out of the way so that 90% of the time, it's not taking space away from the public, and the public would have full access to this space. It wouldn't be the council chambers. It would be the community center, and the offices could be on the second floor next to offices for the public to use. They could be small business offices. They could be small meeting rooms. They could be large meeting rooms. But that second floor of the community center could be primarily community used. And then the community could have greater access to city manager, et cetera, in those offices that are staff offices. So I'm thinking of a community center that maybe we haven't seen, but this was built, you know, most community centers you do go to were built decades ago. And so it's hard to understand what the future center might be. But Lane alluded to it, including a senior center. It could include a youth center. It could include large meeting rooms and play space on the bottom floor, so that this civic or city hall piece of it would actually be a very small percentage of it. That's why I think community center is more appropriate than city hall if we were to think about it in a different way. I think that we need to have equity because less affluent people in Central Marina can't drive or transport themselves as easily as more affluent people who don't. So some people have less discretionary time and money. And so where our centers are, we should consider that. And if we moved everything away from the center of town, that would not be equitable. And we already have a chip on our shoulder of having a lot of new shiny amenities going in at the Fort Ord part of Marina, where the central part of Marina continues to age and not be invested in. And so I think this is our opportunity to turn that around. I like Santa Barbara's setup where they have lots of lawns and places to play in amongst their community centers and government uses. I like Seaside. It has a big lawn, has a lot going on inside of its city hall besides just the offices. I like how Monterey has their huge lawn, as Kathy mentioned. And so I think that we want people to have full access, as much as the 24/7 clock or 18 hours a day as possible. All right. So I'll turn it back to Councilmember McCarthy and then Councilmember Biala.
I'm going to try to join again from us. If you want to mute yours.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciated all the comments that you made, and it sounds like a lot of them are kind of in line with some of the concepts that I was also trying to share. I do have a couple more comments. One is to talk about the compressed timeline. I think part of where that stems from too is that this council decided that if we were going to go out for a bond measure to the public, we wanted to have as much information to the public as possible in terms of site location and exactly what's being proposed. So just kind of wanted to put that out there. I have another comment about the EOC. It wasn't really talked a lot about tonight. I don't know how many currently at the EOC Emergency Operations Center, which my current understanding is we share that with CSUMB. I know I've never been to the CSUMB location. I don't know if any other council members have. I have been to the county location. They've recently built a state-of-the-art EOC. I just question about the need for that. I don't know that it's a big part of what we need to talk about tonight, but if there was one building that had to be sacrificed, I would talk a little bit about that EOC building, and I don't know what kind of savings could be collected from that. I think, Mr. Mayor, what I heard from you, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, is that there's an affinity for this site. Is that, I think is what you were sharing, that you see a lot of potential here, and I certainly do as well. I think that the proposal that we got doesn't fully utilize what I think this site is capable of. I would love to see when and if the consultants come back to see some additional proposals for this site, specifically taking advantage of the annex property which we own. To the point of the frontage, the Del Monte frontage, that went for sale in 2021, from what I saw online, for $5.5 million for the entire thing, which includes the drive-through and the Asian market, all one lot. But I'm wondering if there's the potential to talk about subdividing that at all and just taking advantage of a portion of that lot if the seller is still interested in selling, which it sounds like they were interested in 2021. And for a cheaper price, maybe getting some synergy from some additional lot space there. Very appreciative of your comments about shared space. Totally agree. Whether it's a city hall that's also conference rooms or staff space or community rooms, whatever it is, I think that's a great idea. So I guess in summary, I mean, for where I'm standing right now is this site and the Reservation Road site seem like very strong contenders for me. I think there's a lot of potential there. I would love to see some more ideas about how those can be configured in terms of the planning staff and city hall locations, and with or without an EOC and police station. But I'm very interested in that. And then finally, I'll say that the concern about vacating and relocating, I don't know if staff feels that's going to be a big burden. I don't see it as big of a burden. Of course, I'm not doing the moving, but these are literally double wide trailers, right? There's not a lot to it. I mean, adding some levity, I guess, to the conversation, can't we hook them up to a Ford F-150 and haul them out somewhere else? Or, I mean, in all seriousness, I don't see that as we don't have a lot of stuff here. And so I'm wondering if staff feels like that's a serious concern.
I think you bring up a good point. We can be very flexible on something like that. We have facilities out at the airport, and we have other buildings that we can potentially look at it. And as you phased out, you could say if you had a plan of getting rid of some buildings here, but you'd use other buildings. And we talked about that with the architects, and we can definitely do some phasing that would make it work. That's probably the least of our concerns. It's more of getting the right site and the vision and the feel that the council and the public wants.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to Councilmember Biala.
Okay. Everyone can hear me? Fine. Okay, so now having said sort of the big picture, I'm going to be talking about my thoughts about each of the sites. And I'll just go in the order that they're in this packet. And the Seaside Circle, I have to say that I am partial to that. It was in the general plan as the preferred place for our civic community center 20 years ago. Okay, and they had some other details to that. And when people say that, they like the pristine nature of the park, right along the Seaside Court, that's the library. It's already a used, developed property at that point. And when you go down that road, it's just flat pretty much. And so, those could be the place where we do a beautiful, civic facilities. And the library has been our central, almost like a community hub to me. We do so much there. We have so many meetings. People are used to being directed to there for all kinds of recreational, all kinds of meeting spaces there. And the viewpoint from the library conference room is gorgeous. I want to be able to have a civic center that doesn't look out into a shopping mall. I mean, I want to have a lot of pride in where we place our civic centers. The mayor's idea was something that I also had embraced from very long ago when I went to the League of Cities last conference, and they had converted, a space with a movable platform for the speakers and all of that. And that's where the idea, we could have a movable dais. Why not? And so we have these large, gorgeous rooms that can be dual purposed. And the fact that the regional park district does own it, but I would say they are probably highly motivated to sell us the property for dollar. So that should not be a concern. And the rest of the space, there's a large area. The rest of the space can be used for all kinds of walking spaces where we can appreciate nature. It doesn't have to be totally dedicated because we already have the library and parking lots there. We already have a bathroom out there. So if you're looking for something pristine, you might have to go to the beach or you might have to go to Fort Ord. But this is a central park. It's not necessarily a pristine park as it is even today. And I do like the idea. I'd like to see if we can look at the possibility of not putting the police and the fire department on that property, but do it on DiMaggio because that's the preferred location for the fire department, and you combine that with police. So the access issues that we talked about with Lock Padden are pretty much dissipated. So I think I would like to see that kind of configuration. Okay, in talking about the next one is on the Reservation Road, even though this seems to be a popular one, I think it's in a part of Marina that's a little bit deserted. It's away from most of the businesses. It's down on Reservation Road where we haven't expanded further. I guess that's east. So that's not really a central part in Marina, and I really don't like the idea of it being sandwiched in the back of a mall and a MST site. A person who lived here for decades, I named some of the sites or all 5 of the sites, and the person, and I didn't coach them, they said, well, the property on Reservation is right next to the MST. She was saying that they lived in a place where the Civic Center went next to a bus terminal, and over time they had to move it because it sort of facilitates loitering, and it's a very different space than what a civic center usually evolves into. I do think that there's still an access problem. So, I don't know how that can be. You apparently feel like it can be mitigated, but I'm not sure because there isn't even a beautiful way to make a little roundabout like we have at Lock Padden Park. I mean, it's literally a link fence just blocking off the road. How am I doing in time? Doing great. Okay, so then on Hillcrest, this would be really good, I would think, if we could purchase the property facing Del Monte. And I don't know, maybe you think it's possible, et cetera, but I just don't know. I know you're saying that there's no problem, but I cannot even imagine all of our staff trying to go where, I don't even know what the sites are for relocation, and move what is pretty dilapidated equipment and spaces and move again into someplace temporarily while we take 2 years to build, a nicer facility for them. I think if I were a staff member, I would be dreading that. And I would think about the cost to it too, because where are we going to move people? I mean, are we going to move everybody to the airport? I mean, I can't, I don't even know where we would have enough space for our folks to camp out for 2 years or whatever it would take. I think on Hillcrest, the whole issue of police and fire, we're moving our fire department because that site is located within this footprint, and we're moving it, and now we're going to put it back into this area. It's maybe we're not going to think about that in this new configuration. I don't know, but it seems that there's some problems with this site, I think. And pretty much all the facilities that we're using now will have to be torn down if this is the location that we choose. Every single one of them, they're not even worth saving, as you pointed out. And I really like that first page that you did. Those are informational sources that I think are really, really good. When you have the list of the assessment, not the functional analysis. Where am I talking about that? It's on the second page. Third page. Okay, the assessment. That is really great information that we so much need in terms of facility capacity versus projected needs of current needs, immediate needs, and then this facility in condition index. That is absolutely what we need to be. No matter what site, we need that in order to get voters to understand the dire circumstances of the condition of our facilities. So I really appreciate that. I'll stop and then come back again.
Okay, so you're yielding the floor to
Yeah.
your gentleman from District 1?
Yes.
All right, so let's go back to Councilmember McCarthy.
Thank you, Mayor. So it sounds like, there's a couple different ideas here tonight. I guess a question for staff, the scope of the contract with the consultants, what could we potentially ask them to come back and do? I mean, if there's 3 different ideas, is that something they could come back and incorporate those ideas into 3 additional ideas, or?
Why don't you tell us what from the scope of our contract, we are going to we are bringing back next Tuesday modification of the scope of the contract to included this new assessment and some of those things. They can probably comment on the refining of this site and other sites, if that is within the scope of their existing contract, or if they would need a little bit more. So if you could let us know what you think.
So we're scoped to do this work. We're here to do it. So and we've already kind of studied some of the things you've discussed in terms of going that way. So we would just revise those iterations. And we can come back. No problem at all. Can I clarify one thing? Because I just want to point out, we aren't suggesting getting rid of all the buildings here or recommending getting all the buildings. We actually think the existing public safety building it's actually a really good building. It's got great bones. And I also, and maybe I got it wrong and I apologize, but the gym is existing and we're suggesting that gets rehabbed as well. So I know, but it is a large structure, and it's a metal building too. So there's a lot you can do with that. In its current condition, just fix it up. So the answer to the question is I think we're scoped to work to do iterations. Can we do 20 more? No, but we can definitely clean up the ones we already have.
So I think I'll just conclude by saying I'm still, and I appreciate I'm hearing what Councilmember Biala is saying in terms of the Vince DiMaggio and Lock Padden site. I'm worried about the public outcry of making that park smaller than it is. It has been kind of the crown jewel of Marina in so many different ways. So I think I still stand with wanting to see some more ideas of utilizing this site, that incorporating the annex, possibly incorporating all or part of the Del Monte frontage. Police station, I'm kind of still on the fence about where that goes. It sounds like the fire department and police department and city staff like the Cypress Knoll site. I think that there's some challenges there, but I would like to learn more. And I just want to address one kind of elephant in the room amongst us council members. It wasn't talked about, but Councilmember Biala, I know, had kind of cued into it. But the general plan talks about the Civic Center being where our mayor's beloved Oak Woodland is now. And I don't know if that's something that we've considered, or if that is, if we're going to go back and look at what the general plan actually says, that is the site. And then in addition, a site that is Walmart commercial land, probably cost prohibitive to purchase at this point. But is that something city staff has at all looked into? Is the pros and cons of using that woodland site? I assume that sorry to interrupt, the access is probably even worse than it is along Seaside Court, so it's probably prohibited in that way. But I just want to bring that up, because if we are talking about what the general plan says, that's what it says.
Right, and actually, in the general plan, it didn't prioritize any site. It just said, these are the preferred sites. It listed 3 sites. One is out there, Salinas and Reservation, which is not feasible. And it just said Hillcrest with these issues with Hillcrest, and then the Lock Padden site.
So I have the general plan up now. It says that's it for me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. The sanctity of our parks, I think, is well held. I don't want to damage our parks. I want to improve them and make them more accessible and more used by people, because they have so much to offer people. And I spend a lot of time at Lock Padden, not very much time at Vince DiMaggio. And so I've kind of gotten used to Lock Padden, and I see that rectangular large piece of grass as, for the most part, unused weedy field. How it might get developed, it could be ugly, it could be beautiful, it could be isolating from the rest of the park and damage the rest of the park. It probably could be integrated well into the rest of the park. One of the great things about the library is that it's at that park, and it makes the library feel expansive and beautiful. And if that kind of thought went into another building in that unused field, which is mostly separated and higher elevationally than the rest of the park, there's a way that developing that weedy field would bring more people to the beautiful park. And part of the budget of that construction could be to put in wildlife viewing, interpretive, educational, environmental amenities that are not there now, so that instead of having 75 people a weekday and 150 people on a weekend day go to that park, there could be significant higher numbers of people and families using that park. And having police anywhere near it would make people feel more safe, because right now it is half wild, and some people don't feel as safe as others using that park because of its non-urbanness. And so having a new police station somewhere nearby, whether it be Vince DiMaggio or somewhere on site, I think we might get more people, because they would think then that we were protecting their park by protecting them. So park protection to me includes protecting the park and protecting people's sense of safety at the park so that they use it more. But if we could get away without using that park, for more building of community just amenities. It opens up a lot of other possibilities that are more park centric, not so much community center type of centric. The ballot measure is really important because I think that's part of the reason we are on a compressed schedule. We're thinking about November 2024. And so if November 2026 isn't desirable because not many people vote, and so they might vote down a ballot measure. If 2028 wasn't too far to put on the ballot measure, we wouldn't be compressed. We'd have plenty of time to talk about all of this. But if we want it on the ballot this year, we have to make time to talk about the alternatives so people don't use lack of knowledge of alternatives as a reason to vote no. And so we need to convince people that it's a bad idea to sell Preston Park. And it's a good idea to ask property owners to put out $300, $350 a year for the next 30 years. So they get something right now while they're here and they're younger than they're going to be in 30 years, rather than having someone in the future use that money and then they're not here to enjoy. I think this is a good time for our city that hasn't had a lot of amenities for decades to finally getting around to providing amenities that we're talking about that most cities take for granted. And so I think the bond measure is a good way to go. But if the public would rather sell Preston Park and they understand the trade-offs between those two options, then I think we should sell Preston Park. I think that this is the city's money, either way you look at it, and it's the city's land, the public's land. And so if Preston Park is the overwhelming majority desire to sell so they don't have to do a bond, after all the discussion, then that would be the way to go. If the majority of the people want to keep Preston Park for its great values of affordable housing and financial security for our city, and increase our equity as time goes on, that the worth of that property to the city gets a lot more higher. And so the question is, when do we cash in on that investment, if ever? Because it's a gold mine if we were to cash in on it at any point. It's just, when do we cash in on it? And when we do, that dictates who benefits from the cash out. 20 years from now, it might be a lot different populace that's going to benefit from cashing out on Preston Park. Whereas right now, we have a lot of people who are less affluent that probably are going to get pushed out, or people like them are going to get pushed out as we gentrify and get more expensive, because the quality of life is increasing in Marina. The attention to Marina is increasing, and so it's more demand to live here. And the more we improve it, the more demand goes up, the more cost of renting and buying goes up, the more people that we cherish, the diversity that we cherish, might be reduced as people get pushed out due to gentrification. So I think this is a good time to do the things we've always wanted to do but never had the money. Now we have a bond option that provides money. We have a Preston Park option that provides money. It's not for lack of funding that we wouldn't do what hasn't been done for a long time. We finally have the means. It's just deciding which mechanism to use. And maybe it's a combination. Maybe we parcelize Preston Park, sell part of it, keep part of it. I don't know, but there's a lot to discuss. And in a compressed time frame, it feels like we don't have that ability to flesh it out. Okay, let's go to Councilmember Biala.
Thank you. Okay, first I want to just go say a short comment about Seaside Circle again and Lock Patton Park. And I think I had written already what our mayor had just said, is that if we want our civic center and to be a welcoming and stimulate attendance and participation in Lock Patton, that is the way to do it. However many employees we have, I don't know how many, what is our current employees? 114. If we had a civic center there, they would be going on breaks. They would be walking in that park, all 114, instead of going out and walking on Reservation Road until we finally get that beautified, which is going to be 5 to 10 years from now. So I think that not only a tourist draw for the outside people and people coming to visit for whatever business transactions they need in our civic hall and annex or whatever, they would be going out and walking also. It would be a beautiful thing. But people's ideas of whether beauty is only the preservation of a piece of land in a certain way, it may not be so for everyone. And people going out and walking on that park in their breaks and their lunch hours and eating outside, I think that it could be a beautiful experience. So I just want to go on that. Then I want to say that the whole idea of selling off Preston and Abrams is horrible to me. We are a community that values diversity, equity, inclusion, and that is not only the most humble areas of our city, but it is the way to prevent gentrification. And that trend will always value the land much more, right? If you were on market value. And I am very much against that. I think that if we moved in that way, every person in Preston Park and Abrams would be sitting in this room. It wouldn't be just the few of us that are making these decisions. That is their life. That is their way to stay and participate and create value in our city of Marina. Why would we sell them off? It's almost unbelievable that we'd be even thinking that. So I'm sorry that I just would absolutely oppose that idea. I'm very much against that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're ready to close. Do the council members have anything more? All right, is there any value in going back to the public? We're here for a study session. They've heard a lot after they spoke. Does anyone object to asking them if they have anything more? I need to leave about 8 o'clock. I go to work at 8:30. So we'll get out of here before then, I hope. Does anyone in the public here or present in person want to speak? Kai, what have you heard tonight? You want to talk about anything? Where should we put our fire station? Okay, does anyone in the chamber want to speak? And then I'll ask people online if they want to speak. Okay, seeing no one rise, let's go online. We might have one attendee. Alex and then Jeff. Go ahead, Alex.
Hello, I just wanted to, excuse me, to respond to Kathy Biala and say that, a big building with 114 employees taking walks just wouldn't be the same. I know you say, well, it's like, well, these people, you said they, I guess that's me. If they want to go find open space to walk in, they can go to the beach or Fort Ord. Well, I got this park right next to my house and it's really nice the way it is. And yeah, I'm in my 70s and I've lived here all my life, but it's a great park. And I think you want to ruin it. I just don't think you want the place in your backyard, pretty much. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. And not to get too personal to any one council member, we're just sharing ideas. But could everyone hear Alex, who just spoke? Okay. All right. Let's go to Jeff Markham.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry if I missed it. I had to take my dogs for a walk, but
Jeff, could you start over, please?
yes, of course. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, Jeff, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. The bond to me is very much a hypothetical at this point. Is can we paint numbers down? If we went with a $62.5 million bond at current interest rate, what would a property owner pay per year for the assessed value of their house? Do we know that figure?
Jeff, we'll answer all your questions when you're done.
I'm done. Thank you.
Does anyone else online wish to speak before we close public comment? Okay, not seeing any remote hands going up. We'll close public comment. Let's come back to first Jeff's question.
So this is very high level, but the average assessed value for a home in Marina is roughly around 500,000. And at a $62 million bond, you're probably looking at annually $320 a year for the average assessed value. So if your home is $1 million, it would be double that. If it's less than that, it'd be proportionally less than that.
Okay, did I miss any questions? I think I might have. Did anyone just ask? No, no one else noted any questions, so maybe I didn't. Okay, so as we wrap up, where do we go from here?
I think as you said, I think we need to have a lot more meetings with the council and the public compressed. And so we'll download with our RNT. And I think what we heard is we're going to come back and flush out some of these scenarios a little bit more and come back with some different iterations and probably try to do that in the next, because by the time council gets back from their visit in Korea, so maybe the end of May, we'll target first part of June.
All right, to the people here, was this day constructive and do you feel inspired to be part of the next steps? Yeah, Grace? But was this day a good piece to that process?
I'm disappointed there's so few people.
Yeah. Yeah. Did all the directors and staff, did they think this was a worthwhile exercise today? Yeah, good. All right. Okay, so
Second comment.
yes, we go to Councilmember McCarthy and then Councilmember Biala.
Just real briefly, I just want to say that I know that everybody on this dais loves our parks unlike no other. And although I appreciate the comments from the public, I think it was a little misstated. I know that Councilmember Biala especially has a great affinity for our parks. Mr. Mayor, you're in the park several times a week. You do this for a living. So I think it's worth saying that. We may disagree a little bit on the location of some of these facilities. I do think there are challenges with the coastal zone. I personally live by that spot. I think it'd be really neat to have a city facility there. I'm just not convinced that for the greater public it's the right spot, but it's worth taking a couple seconds saying that I think everyone on this council just has parks front and center in their mind all the time. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Biala?
Okay. Thanks. I know that I was pretty forceful about my opinion about the selling off of Preston and Abrams properties. But I didn't hear from certainly the folks that aren't here, the two people, and also from the mayor and Councilmember McCarthy. But I think we need to discuss it as a first thing. If we're going to say we're going to sell off the properties, then we don't have to go through this process, right? So I would like to put that to bed or to consider it and then be done with the rest of it if that's what we're going to be doing. So I think that issue has to be discussed and we have to make a determination at the next meeting. Otherwise, we don't have to go through this.
This being bond measure or this being facility analysis?
No, I mean, selling off Preston and Abrams, because if we did that, we wouldn't have to go for a bond. So this is attached to needing to define what the money is that we're asking for. Where is it going to go? So I would like to have that discussion and, maybe prematurely I have, given my opinion, but I feel very strongly about it. So let's have that discussion first. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you for being here today and have a nice rest of your evening. We'll be adjourned.